We're in the midst of summertime fever, and for many wrestling fans it's almost time for one of the biggest wrestling events of the year, not named SummerSlam. That's right, we're talking about Slammiversary, one of TNA's most celebrated pay-per-views of the year. And depending on how the company's feeling at the time, it can often feel like the most important show of the entire year. As TNA officially gets underway on the road to Slammiversary, what better time than now to look back and reflect on some of the greatest things to occur at this annual event. Just to be clear, we're ranking these Slammiversaries based on the incredible matches, iconic moments, and the overall importance these shows have had back then and now. If you disagree with our picks, be sure to leave your own list in the comments section. But for now, welcome to Lace 'em Up Media, and here are the 10 best TNA Slammiversary pay-per-views of all time. Before we get started, be sure to like, comment and subscribe and hit the notifications bell so you never miss any of our brand new content. Honorable mention: Slammiversary 2013. A show that nearly made it onto the list mainly from the opening Ultimate X match, the last knockout standing match, AJ vs. Angle, and the main event between Bully Ray and Sting. But this show also had duds like Jay Bradley vs. a pre-Dexter Loomis Sam Shaw, a forgettable six-man tag match, and Abyss winning the TV title in a sub-5-minute bout before never defending the title for over 390 days. Had those matches been better or replaced with something else, this event would have made it into the top 5, but as it stands, it only gets an honorable mention. Anyway, on with the list. Number 10. Slammiversary 10. It really says something about how impressive the recent Slammiversaries have been, when this event manages to make it to the bottom 10. Outside of the awesome theme song and video package that hyped the event, Slammiversary 10 marked 10 years of the company's existence as a pro wrestling heavy hitter, and the attendance figures ranged somewhere between 5,000 to 5,500. The opening match between Samoa Joe and Austin Aries for the X Division title was a tremendous way to kick off the show. The Triple Threat #1 Contenders match was good for what it was. Brooke Tessmacher defeated Gail Kim to become the new Knockouts champion in her home state of Texas. The duo of Kurt Angle and AJ Styles beat Kazarian and Daniels to become the new TNA World Tag Team Champions, and the main event saw Bobby Roode defeat Sting to retain his TNA World Championship. In terms of memorable moments, you had Christian Cage making a surprise return to TNA, as well as James Storm, who defeated Crimson in a 2-minute match which saw the end of his undefeated streak. Also, we got the announcement of Sting becoming the very first wrestler to be inducted into the TNA Hall of Fame. The show wasn't perfect, as evident by matches like Joseph Park vs. Bully Ray, Kid Cash vs. Hernandez, or the Robbies vs. Garrett Bischoff and D-Von in a tag team match. But overall, this event truly felt like a celebration for a promotion that has long been dogged by the critics, and in the process TNA had one of the best pay-per-views of the year. Number 9. Slammiversary 2008. The year of 2008 was an amazing one for the company, as every division in the promotion was on fire by this point, with interesting storylines, great action, and a whole lot of star power throughout the roster. This is best seen at that year's Slammiversary event, with the opening contest being a 15-minute Petey Williams vs. Frankie Kazarian match for the TNA X Division Championship. LAX defeated Team 3D in a rematch from the previous month's pay-per-view to retain the tag team titles. AJ Styles defeated Kurt Angle in singles action, and the main event for the TNA World Championship saw Samoa Joe retain his title against Rhino, Bobby Roode, Christian Cage and Booker T, making Joe the first and only wrestler to retain the world title in a King of the Mountain match in Slammiversary history. This event does have its fair share of monotony, as the 6-women tag team match was nothing special. Awesome Kong showed off her dominance by beating up 2 female wrestlers and an Elvis impersonator, and the retread of the Miss Elizabeth/Randy Savage wedding between SoCal Val and Jay Lethal was funny, but still felt like a blatant rip-off of a more memorable wrestling moment. Nevertheless, Slammiversary 2008 was an impressive, if not an overlooked pay-per-view from a great year in TNA history. Number 8. Slammiversary 2005. The event that started it all, the very first Slammiversary pay-per-view, took place on June 19, 2005, almost 3 years since the very first TNA pay-per-view aired. And in the process, this show set the benchmark for all of the Slammiversaries that were to follow. The opening contest featured an X Division match which was won by Shark Boy, the person who allegedly created the name for the pay-per-view, and the TNA fans witnessed the debut of Samoa Joe against a very determined Son Jay Dutt in a 10-minute barn burner of a match. Other highlights from this show included a returning Alex Shelley wrestling in an ultra-competitive match against a Mexican pro wrestler known as Shocker, An amazing match between Team Canada versus the Naturals for the NWA TNA Tag Team titles. A triple threat elimination match between Christopher Daniels, Matt Bentley and Chris Sabin for the X Division Championship that was a perfect combination of in-ring action and storytelling, especially towards the first and second eliminations. The main event for the NWA World Championship was a King of the Mountain match between Monty Brown, Abyss, Raven, AJ Styles, and a last-minute replacement in the form of Sean Waltman. The match itself was botchy in a few places, but it was a tremendous main event match that not only set up future storyline feuds, but it also culminated in Raven finally achieving his destiny by becoming World Heavyweight Champion for the very first time in his illustrious career. The other matches like Ron the Truth Killings versus The Outlaw, Bobby Roode versus Lance Hoyt, and AMW versus Conan and BG James are pretty unremarkable. Regardless, Slammiversary 2005 was yet another show during TNA's golden era. Number 7. Slammiversary 2023. By and large, the 19th edition of Slammiversary wasn't the worst show of the year for TNA. In fact, it's pretty good looking back at it. The Ultimate X match was a good way to kick things off, and the surprise return of Jake Something also made things interesting. The Eddie Edwards-Frankie Kazarian match had some incredible action, and Lio Rush's win of the X Division title was certainly unexpected but made for an incredible Slammiversary moment. The tag team matches for both the male and female tag titles were good and saw some brand new champions being crowned, and the main event between world champion Alex Shelley and Nick Aldis was great, before Josh Alexander returned to confront the champ, thus setting the stage for their impending world title match in the main event of that year's Bound for Glory. The tag team match between Bully Ray, Diener, Scott D'Amore and a returning Eric Young was easily the worst match on the show, second only by the semi-main event of Trinity versus Deonna Purrazzo, with the match itself feeling pretty basic and nowhere near close to the hype the company built it up to be. Still, a fun show, albeit with some underwhelming stuff peppered in between. Number 6. Slammiversary 2024. If 2023's Slammiversary was a fun show, then the following year's event was even better. As the first TNA event in Montreal since 2011, Slammiversary took place in the Verdun Auditorium in front of a little over 4,000 fans who bared witness to things like Mike Santana versus Jake Something, Wes Lee rejoining the Rascals to defeat NXT's No Quarter Catch Crew, Jordynne Grace defeating Ash by Elegance to retain her Knockouts World Championship, and PCO defeated AJ Francis to become a double champion in his home country. But let's not talk about how the reign turned out. The system took a lot of L's on this night as they lost the opening match, the tag title match, and Moose lost the world title in an elimination match. But by far, the biggest thing this show will be remembered for is the match between Mike Bailey and Mustafa Ali for the X Division Championship. The action was great, as to be expected. But the moments like Bailey overcoming the odds, Trent Seven getting his payback on Ali, Earl Hebner returns and refusing to recreate the Montreal Screwjob, culminating in Bailey making Ali tap out and leading to one of the loudest pops you will ever hear from a Canadian crowd, which is really saying something. Number 5. Slammiversary 2017. When it comes to the worst years in TNA wrestling history, 2017 is somewhere if not at the top of the list. Or maybe it's the bottom. Anyway, this year saw everything from a failed merger with Global Force Wrestling, Bruce Pritchard becoming an on-screen authority figure, heel Josh Matthews on commentary, and that's not even taking into account the PR disasters and that year's Bound for Glory into consideration. Yet despite 2017 being a very bad year, the company somehow was able to produce a really great pay-per-view in that year's Slammiversary event. The four-way tag match for the GFW and Impact World Tag Team titles saw Santana and Ortiz win the gold and featured names who would go on to have bigger success in the following years. Sienna defeated Rosemary to retain her title but also become a dual champion by winning the Knockouts title. The 2 out of 3 falls match for the X Division Championship was good for what it was. The tag team match between Moose and NFL star D'Angelo Williams versus Eli Drake and Chris Adonis was also good, especially when it came to Williams's in-ring performance. EC3 defeated James Storm in a strap match, plus Eddie and Alicia Edwards beat Angelina Love and Davey Richards in a Full Metal Mayhem match. The main event between Alberto and Lashley in a title versus title match was fantastic. It's just a shame Alberto's reign ended so prematurely. Aside from the Jeremy Borash and Joseph Park versus Josh Matthews and Scott Steiner match, the action and energy throughout are what makes this show so memorable. Also, we got to hear the legendary Don West do color commentary one final time in TNA, which only adds to this show's prestige. Number 4. Slammiversary 2016. A year before the previous entry, TNA was having a tumultuous year in 2016 with stories of these issues becoming front-page news for the wrestling media. But much like what they would do in 2017, the company produced an impeccable Slammiversary pay-per-view in spite of the issues. Another four-way match kicked off the event, but this time for the X Division Championship, which ended with Eddie Edwards winning his first of several X Division titles. Matches like Eli Drake vs. Bram and the Knockouts Triple Threat title match were good, while the match between the Tribunal vs. Grotto and Shera was surprisingly good considering the names involved. Another Full Metal Mayhem match occurred at Slammiversary with the Hardy Brothers taking center stage. The tag team title match and the EC3 vs. Mike Bennett match was a little overbooked but still delivered in their own right. The best match on the show, and probably the best in all of 2016, would have to be Bobby Lashley vs. Drew Galloway for the TNA World Championship. Words like fast-paced and hard-hitting are some that could be used to describe this match, as these two beat the heck out of one another until Lashley made Drew pass out via submission to regain the title. A good show from a rather unpredictable year. Number 3. Slammiversary 2021. As the first pay-per-view with fans back in attendance, it should come as no surprise for you to hear that the tickets for this event sold out in less than 30 minutes. But things would only get better once the actual show aired. An Ultimate X match for the X Division title kicked off the proceedings in spectacular fashion, while Matt Cardona and his real-life wife Chelsea Green beat the team of Brian Myers and Tennille Dashwood in mixed tag team action. In singles action, W. Morrissey was able to score the victory over Eddie Edwards, and Chris Sabin picked up the upset win over Moose. The Knockouts title match is notable for Thunder Rosa's surprise debut before officially signing with AEW. And speaking of All Elite Wrestling, Kenny Omega was able to retain his Impact World Championship against Sami Callihan in a violent first-time ever match-up in the main event. Now this show was far from perfect, with the impromptu Finn Juice vs. Shera and Fulton match basically being short and forgettable, whilst the four-way tag title match felt overbooked with the Good Brothers once again becoming the tag team champions. Despite these flaws, 2021 Slammiversary continued the company's pre-pandemic streak of sold-out events combined with some incredible action. Number 2. Slammiversary 2019. An underrated show in the grand scheme of things. This event took place at a time when a series of changes were beginning to take shape both in and out of the company, but as we've mentioned already on this list, this didn't stop TNA from producing one of the best wrestling events of 2019. Although the opening contest, the RVD vs. Moose match and the Triple Threat Tag Team bout were somewhere between underwhelming and decent, everything else on the show was awesome. Eddie Edwards' first blood match with Killer Kross was amazing. The four-way Monsters Ball match for the Knockouts Championship might rank as one of the best women's matches of that entire year, and the X Division title bout between Rich Swann and Johnny Impact is actually better than you might remember. The world title match between Michael Elgin and Brian Cage was phenomenal and undoubtedly the only good thing to come out of Cage's time as world champion. And then the main event between Tessa Blanchard and Sami Callihan was a fantastic way to close out the show, with two of the company's top stars putting on an instant classic on one of TNA's biggest pay-per-views. And so we come to the number 1 entry. We've talked about some really good, if not great, Slammiversaries up to this point. But this is one of the all-time best. Number 1. Slammiversary 2018. From the marvelous-looking venue that was the Rebel Entertainment Complex to the rabid crowd inside that arena, the 2018 Slammiversary was a pivotal event for TNA, and that's before you mention the card itself, so let's go over the matches. The international four-way match that opened the show felt like a throwback to the X Division's golden era. Tessa Blanchard, in her first TNA pay-per-view match, defeated Allie in impressive fashion, while Su Yung retained her Knockouts Championship against Madison Rayne. Also, Su's entrance with a coffin was also amazing. The House of Hardcore match between Eddie Edwards and Tommy Dreamer was enjoyable, even if the finish felt a little flat, and the same could be mentioned for the X Division title match. Elsewhere on the card, the present meets the past when Santana and Ortiz of the new LAX defeated Homicide and Hernandez in a non-title street fight. The Hair vs. Mask match was a career-defining bout for both Sammy and Penta, and it was as brutal and disgusting as you could imagine. And finally, Moose also had a career-defining match in the main event against Austin Aries for the Impact World Championship. As tremendous as the show is, what also gets it the number 1 spot is the fact that much of the early to mid-2010s was such a tedious period for the company, and the last 2 years made many lose interest in the product, so much that the company was on the edge of being bought out by the WWE at one point. By the time this event came to an end, the company sent the clearest message to wrestling fans and critics alike that TNA Wrestling wasn't going away anytime soon. In addition to being the first of many pay-per-views in company history to be sold out, there is no question that Slammiversary 2018 is one of the best, if not the best Slammiversary of all time. And that's our list. What do you think was the best Slammiversary show of all time, and are you excited for this year's event? Leave your thoughts in the comment section, and don't forget to follow us on X, Bluesky Social, Facebook and YouTube for more wrestling-related content.